How are you? My name is Kaitlyn, Psychic Moon Mentor, and I'm excited today to bring you another Cosmic Tea Time chat. Today, the subject is about diving into the authentic self and discovering that and going on this journey of self-discovery and how to arrive at this clarity and this inner wisdom and strength that we all have. And so I have someone who's going to join me. Let me see if I can invite her as she is. She has joined. So if you don't already know me, I work with women to find calm confidence. Hello, she's here. How
Hi.
are you?
Good, how are you?
Oh, good. So excited to dive into this topic today. Yeah, I had a beautiful synchronicity come up yesterday with a client, so it feels like perfect timing. But yeah, would you be so kind to introduce yourself and say hello and a little bit about what you do?
So my name's April. I live in Kentucky, in Berea specifically. I'm a Holy Fire Reiki Master, and I have, within the past year, myself gone through a huge transformation, really chasing my own passion, opening my own Reiki studio, where I really want to help individuals discover their authentic self through that transformation. The power of transformation is huge, and there's so many ways you can do that, and that's the beautiful thing about it, is everybody's path is different. And so that's really what I'm passionate about. And that's what I love sharing with the world. And I love seeing everybody else's little healing journeys. It's so magical. So that's a little bit about me, but
Yeah.
I'm just happy to talk about this topic. I mean, it's a very deep topic, but, with our own, I love teaching from personal experience. I think there's something wonderful about that too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, April. I'm so excited that you can join me today. And you're right, there are so many different options, there are so many different tools out there. And what I've learned in my own practice and talking with others is that they all work, right? They all work, they're all effective. Not that we have to do all of them, certainly not. But we can follow our own curiosity. You can follow your own intrigue into the tools that stand out to you. And a lot of times we don't even know why necessarily something catches our eye, but when you can follow that curiosity and just go for it, I think that's when true magic can happen. So I know for me, it took me a while to give myself permission. My throat chakra has always been a huge energy center for me that I've worked on. Just, I don't know, I've always been more of an introvert, more quiet, highly sensitive, as it can come across in some of my physical attributes, like blue eyes, like light, super sensitive to light, super blonde hair always, very light skin, sensitive to all the physical things. But as I got older, I learned in 2017 after my spiritual awakening how sensitive I was to different energies and things as well. And so that was sort of an interesting discovery. But one thing at that time that I gave into, something I was always curious about, was tarot and cards and this sort of psychic realm, right? But I was always sort of afraid to go there because of
Yeah.
other people's opinions, right? Sometimes, I don't know if you've had this experience, but when you're quiet and shy, it's easy to sort of just follow what other people do. And so I never really gave myself permission to
Yeah.
dive into it. But when I did, I never looked back. I'm still doing tarot readings and psychic readings, and just been so fun to explore.
Yeah, and I've experienced that all, same thing going through the throat chakra expansion. I, for a long time, just kind of did Reiki on the side and, really fully committing to it has really engaged this throat chakra and really made me aware of all these blockages of, just like you said, where you feel like you kind of have to hide yourself. And it's really learning to overcome those fears and work with them to be able to open yourself up to express it fully. And I think there's a lot of individuals going through that right now, being able to overcome this not only taboo-ness with even within your own intuition, but understanding and expressing that. Like we're lot of us are learning how to express that. And I think that's a huge awakening that's happening right now. And I'm all here for it. I love it. I love being able to watch people blossom and be able to be comfortable in their own skin and with who they really are, rather than hiding that away. You know, a lot of us have been taught to really hide ourselves away and not really honor our true essence. And you know, connecting with our higher self to be able to follow and listen to our path and listen to that guidance that's always around us. Helping people with that is so magical, because my life has changed so much for the better after I actually started working with that energy versus telling myself I have to ignore it, or, you know, choosing to not work with it. And that's beautiful. I love it. And that's a big part of this sort of topic of self-discovery, is that intuition is, like you said, being curious about that. You know, being curious, why do I feel this way? Why do I have this feeling that I can't explain? I think that's a huge portion of accepting in that intuition, because we're all naturally intuitive. And it's learning to uncondition that mind that we aren't, that we've been told for so long we aren't, because we're all connected. And welcoming that in and giving yourself the space to be curious about it. You know, so many of us are caught in our day-to-day lives, and we're, you know, priorities come up, other things come up, and it's very easy. I know for me at the beginning, it was very easy for me to push aside my practices, or, you know, just tell myself I'm, you know, gonna ignore it, or I always say file cabinet it, you know, I'd file cabinet that thought or feeling in the back of my mind, and then I'd never come back to it. So really allowing yourself that time and that space to just even open the door to the relationship with yourself, because so many of us focus on our external relationships, but I think that one thing that many of us don't realize is we have to have a relationship with ourselves too. And that's super important. And a lot of us forget that. And it's easy to forget that. But
it's intimidating to even start sometimes, right? Because
absolutely,
we are conditioned and we are raised by people, you know, generally who love us and want to see us do well, but we're like taught to follow them and follow their rules and follow what they say, right? We're not always, some of us maybe, but we're not always taught to, like, what do you think? Or to, you know, to express that, or like, how does it feel for you? What do you think the best choice is for you? And that more of that, like, introspective, these open-ended questions for ourselves. And so it can be just scary and intimidating to start something new, but if you can sort of quiet the noise, which, you know, feels interesting as someone who's experienced like anxiety and depression, to sort of retreat a little bit and sort of dive into some of that, like, what do I like? What are some of my interests? But approach it with more of like a playfulness versus like feeding the anxiety in the sense of like, oh, like I'm gonna do it wrong, or like I might be punished if I do it wrong. Do it in the sense of like, oh, I wonder what could happen if I, you know, tried whatever. And I was doing a reading yesterday, a crystal reading, for this woman, and we got to talking a little bit. And one of the crystals she picked was selenite, and so we talked a little bit. And she's like, I don't know why, but I just started like wiping like the selenite all over my body, and I was like, yes, perfect. She's like, I have no idea what I'm doing, you know, like I have no idea if I'm doing anything right. And I'm just like, yes, no, your intuition led you to exactly what you needed. You can use selenite to do that. It's a perfect practice. It was so beautiful.
And really letting go of this notion of like right or wrong. Like, you know, so many of us have been taught that there's a right way to do something and then a wrong way to do it. And I think the wonderful thing about really connecting with your own intuition is, and I've heard obviously a lot of other practitioners say that there's no wrong way to do your healing journey. And I think, you know, a lot of people are like, well, where do I start? And it's hard to answer that question, because that starting point is so different for everyone. Because there's no right way to do it. There's no cookie cutter way to your healing journey.
Right.
And so like towards the beginning, it's, I think, just really touching with that intuition and actually learning to trust yourself. Like, trust that even if it doesn't make logical sense to you, trust that you deep down know what's the best for yourself. And that's the biggest thing that I remind people. Like, I had a Reiki client, and they really didn't know who they were. And so it really boils down to, well, just start with the little things. You know, just start
Yeah.
what in your daily life when you're doing something. What does it make you feel? Does it make you feel good? Okay, then just kind of note that. Don't, you know, put a lot of pressure around, okay, this is what I need to be doing. Just take a note of it. And then as time goes on and you become slowly more and more aware of what brings you the good, uplifting energy, then that's going to lead you to where you need to be. And so I think a lot of it too is just not putting pressure on yourself, which is funny because I always put pressure on myself. So this is coming up because I'm actually going through this period right now again too, is not putting so much pressure on it. There's, you know, there's not like a checklist of things that you have to do or let go to be spiritual or to be in tune, you know. So letting that go, because it's so easy to label things, and that's something that I don't want people to be misled by, is, oh, in order to be spiritual or enable, or in order to be healing, I have to be doing X, Y, and Z. No, that's not the
Right.
case. You know, as long as you feel as though you're making progress, and it may be a little bit of progress, it doesn't matter. You could be going backwards. I mean, there's times I've felt like, man, I've already healed this, you know, sort of insecurity. Why is it coming up again? You
Oh
know?
gosh, yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
it comes back up for a reason. And the way I kind of always describe that is, once we kind of get to another level of awareness, like, those things that you may have thought you healed are going to resurface so that you can heal it on another level. And so it's
Yeah,
not
that's
really
a
the,
spiral.
yeah,
Always will
like,
spiral back to it as we ascend. Yep.
yeah. And so it's not about healing it so that's permanently gone. It's like healing it so that as you become more of yourself, you're integrating that deeper into you.
Mm-hmm.
And
You can accept it
yeah,
fully. Yeah, exactly.
and that's amazing. So, like, if you feel like you've healed something and it's coming back up, don't feel like you haven't. It's coming up because you're getting ready to heal on another level. And so offer yourself compassion.
Probably growing and expanding and about to like hit the next level that you
Exactly.
want. And so
Yeah.
yeah,
I
it's
kind of
coming back
get a
up. Yeah.
little excited when something comes up again, because I'm like, oh, I'm getting ready to expand again, you
Right.
know?
Oh, there's a
So
breakthrough coming. Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
So I think the biggest thing is just offering yourself compassion, because it's
Mm.
so it's so easy to get into that voice of nagging of, oh, like, I thought I healed this, I could have done better, you know, or anything like that. It's just always coming back to that, having compassion for yourself, because this is not an overnight journey. You know, there are still things about myself that I'm discovering, that I've been on this journey for probably at least 3 years now, really dedicating myself to discovering who I'm meant to be, who I really am, my authentic expression even. And it's a journey. It's not about the destination. It's really about your journey. And so there's no rush to it. And I think the more you try to rush it, the more you're going to have resistance to it, because it's
Mm-hmm,
not necessarily
definitely.
about that.
And that trust factor is huge. And similarly, like I often am focused on this because I too believe like we're all intuitive, we all have psychic abilities. Sometimes it's just a matter of remembering those, getting reacquainted with them, and really ultimately trusting them. But trust is a practice. It's like a muscle
Yeah.
that you have to work out in the gym. And you mentioned something beautiful, you know, like when you try something, if you're curious to try meditation, like there's so many different meditations. So maybe you try like a chanting meditation, like you chant Om, and then you notice, you check in with yourself, okay, how does that feel? Okay. And you just sort of like note, which is why I encourage people to either like journal or like have some sort of tracking system
Yeah.
so that it's something to go back to when, like you also mentioned, like we come back to this like scattered brain, like, everything's going wrong. And it's like, not really. Hold on. Look how much
Yeah.
growth I've seen, right? But it's nice to have something to actually physically flip through and be like, wait, okay, I feel good when I do this. Okay, let me try that because right now I don't feel good,
Yeah.
you know. But
And
yeah, it's sort of remembering, and as you get a play and practice, most often I found for myself, you know, in 2017 when I was already leaning into self-discovery, and then I had a job loss and got fired and was just like, F it, I'm saying yes to me and like what I want to do. And so I was always curious about tarot, but I was still a little nervous, you know, oh, was that like bad? Was it like the devil or whatever, you know, having a Christian upbringing. But ultimately I was like, no, okay, I'm going to decide for myself, right? And how I feel. Like, I'm very sensitive. I know if it's bad or if it doesn't feel good, I'll just stop. I can just stop
exactly.
doing it.
Mhm.
I don't have to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And so that's a great place to start. Okay, where do I think I could do it? What do I think might work? But also giving yourself some play and flexibility in like your approach, right? Like, give yourself grace. Like, you're just learning, you're just trying something new with like meditation. Like, it doesn't have to be stillness and silence. Like, play
Totally.
play with something that might feel okay, you know, and see how it goes.
Yeah, that was my biggest thing when I first started my sort of spiritual awakening was I was kind of it was really right around like the COVID time. And so I lived by myself and I was actually working, I was here in Kentucky and all of my family's out of state. So I moved back here to work. And I really felt, I don't want to say forced, but that I was with myself 24/7. And so it really made it a priority for me to actually start to listen to myself and understand myself. And I think the biggest misconception for me was like for so long I had been intrigued by meditation, but I thought it was just, oh, sitting in silence. And
Mm-hmm.
I could not turn my brain off, you know, all the thoughts and everything. And that was so hard for me. And so something that I've like learned along the way is that meditation can be so many different things other than just sitting in silence. I personally love guided meditations because it gives me something to visualize and I like doing that. But meditation could even be going for a walk. Like, I don't think people realize that meditating doesn't have to be stationary. Um, I've been a runner ever since high school, and something I discovered after my spiritual awakening was that running for me was almost meditative because for me, there's two really big factors in meditation. A, making sure you're grounded, so making sure that you still feel secure in your space, but then allowing yourself to open up to receive your energy and to like feel it. And so for me, it was like running established that sort of groundedness with my body. I was, present in my body to run, but it allowed the sort of veil on my mind to fall away. So it was really how I received a lot of inner guidance for myself. And so that was really cool. I was like, oh, wait, this is kind of like meditating, but it's like a physical sort of meditation.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really awesome. And people need to find what sort of meditation works for them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but also too, like a lot of people get upset. I've just started guided meditations and I've heard a lot of people saying like, well, I just can't sit down for 10 minutes and, sit for, that long and I get distracted with thoughts and stuff. And that's okay. Like I tell people that's perfectly normal. Like my guided meditations usually are about 20 minutes long. And when I first started meditating, it was maybe 2 minutes I could sit down without getting distracted and
Yeah.
everything like that. But that's why it's called a practice. Like it's not like you're supposed to just be able to sit down and meditate for an hour and be great. It's a practice.
And it's
And
different every day, even for people that practice for like years and years and years. Like, some days you're just like, oh, nope, like, there's my monkey mind.
yeah,
I'm
there's
just not
days
clear today.
yeah.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
days I'm like, okay, 10 minutes is all I'm going to be able to do today. Other days I do like some of the longer ones. But I want to say like meditating is almost kind of like what you're saying. It's almost like a muscle earlier, like with the trust thing.
Mhm.
It's if you practice it and work yourself up to it, you're going to be able to do the 30-minute, 40-minute meditations. And that's where I found that I liked the guided meditations, because it allowed me to focus my visualization on something so that I wasn't paying attention to my thoughts. And
Yeah.
so that's why I love guided meditations. But um, like you were saying, the chanted meditations are really cool too. You know, working through that barrier of fear of, you know, expressing yourself. Because I know for a long time, I always felt weird, like, you know, just saying something out loud. And I
Yeah.
had to work.
I would always like cry, like be moved to tears so often when I'm like go to share my voice and like, but I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be a personal trainer and then a health coach and like in marketing, like you have to talk about what you do and
Yeah,
how you can help people. But yeah, it was like so intense. So a lot of energy to work
yeah.
through for
And I've
sure.
even done, there was one meditation I did that I really loved. And it was like, I want to say a Native American, like drumming meditation, where it was just the music, but it was the drumming. And I sat down to just listen to it, to feel the energy of the vibration of the sounds. But I actually, about maybe 5 minutes into it, got up and actually started dancing to the beats of the drum. And I realized that that was actually a physical meditation. Like it was just sound.
Yeah.
Like somebody could have just sat there and just listened to it, but my body was calling for movement. And so it was like I was able to give that to it in that meditation. So walking away from this idea that meditation just means sitting still, you know, I love to bake too. Like baking could be a form of meditation for you.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
think cooking is for sure because
yeah,
like you're chopping ingredients and stirring, it can bring you to this like centered space because of all the repetitions that
right.
you're
Yeah.
doing. It's very helpful to calm this like talkative side of the brain.
Yeah, and I like to say that like meditation is anything that really brings you inner peace. Um,
Mhm.
because coming into that place of inner peace is what really opens you up to invite yourself in a loving space, because it's so often we're meeting ourselves from a place of judgment. And for
Mhm.
me, meditation was the way that I could open that door to invite myself in through a loving space, rather than, oh, I didn't get this done today and I should have done this. And, you know, those are such negative reactions to myself. Versus when I was meditating, it was like, oh, hi, you know, oh, I love you today, you know, like, so such a different reaction to my own energy, my own self. That when you actually start inviting that relationship in, I believe that's when you start connecting with, you know, what we call the higher self. Like the energy of your higher self is allowed to come in, because it has to come through that loving center. It has to come through that loving energy, in order to really integrate. So I think that's really important too. But
Let's And yeah, there's a comment. I think I just realized me doing my makeup or just playing
yes,
in, yeah,
I love
and me
that.
meditating. Absolutely, getting lost in like art. Yeah, absolutely. And I like to start people with like movement or sound usually. And if you're
hmm
someone who really wants to arrive at this like place of like calm confidence and being able to speak up for yourself, like sound and practicing like just with yourself and your own vocals can be a beautiful start to that, to let yourself just move your own voice, whether you start with something like Om, right,
Yeah.
like the universal sound that connects us to like the universal energy of life. Or I love Sanskrit, like I love all the sounds and language of Sanskrit. So another great one that's super simple is Om So Hum. So OM,
Yeah.
some SUM, hum, HUM, which is very similar. It's like connecting to this universal life force energy, reminding us that we are connected with the infinite, reminding you of like infinite possibilities, right? Which is one that I love because when we have certain like expectations, and usually I have like high expectations
Yep.
like for myself, and that's what can drive me down to this like criticism and like this negative spiral. But that affirmation and that sound, once you just sort of sit with it, let your voice move, notice how it like feels and moves in your body, can eventually also move your mind to other possibilities outside the possibilities that you're aware of, which to me is so like wild and beautiful and a great way to connect with spirit or source or however you might resonate with it, God, or whatever word you use there. I use a lot interchangeably. But for these like insights and these downloads to come in of that intuition, that insight for what should I be doing? What's going to be the best for me? What's going to help me get that job or get that relationship or whatever it is you want to manifest, right? Like that's a great tool to sort of come into.
Yeah. And I love that you said like playing earlier, because that is so true. Like we, as we have grown up, have really become out of touch with our inner child. And so like I love helping people reestablish that connection, because we're here to play. Like we're here to have fun. We're here to learn. Like, and playing is such a huge aspect of that. Like this concept of, you know, playing is only for children, I think is not very accurate and kind of disconnected with what we really are meant here to do. Because playing could be like manipulating energy, you know, in a form it is. It is, you know, manipulating energy. And at the basis of things, I think that that's what we're here to do. We're here to learn our life lessons. We're here to learn how to manipulate energy, whether it be physically or, you know, spiritually or whatever that avenue is for your soul. At the basis of it all, it's we're learning how to manipulate energy, how to use it, how to change it. Because everything is energy. That's like the base law of our existence, is everything is energy. And like that's one of the reasons why I love working with crystals. You know, I get people that are like, oh, those are just rocks, and I'm like, no, there's so much more than that, because at the basis of everything, we're all energy. And if you don't think that something in your vicinity is going to be equally affecting you as much as you are affecting it, then you know, you're missing out on a huge opportunity to find another avenue for healing. And so that's one of my passions too, is like you were saying earlier, crystal healing. I love the crystals and all that fun stuff. And I think that was one of the things that really helped me early on in my journey discover myself too. I remember the first crystal I got was just like a palm stone. And I remember being like, this isn't going to help me. But my sister was the one who really was like, you know, try it, you know. And so.
What have you got to lose? Give it a try. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think most of us have started at a place of being a skeptic, you know, and then it's through our personal
healthy
experience.
Like I think that's a great place to start. Yeah.
And that's where that curiosity kind of comes in. And I think there's a little bit of that mystical trust in it helping, is what also ignites that within ourselves too, is the mystery and the unknown. It's like, you know, maybe there's no direct way for us to prove that it does help, but it's through our own experience that we know it does something. And I think that is so much more valuable than, you know, like research being done showing that, you know, it has an impact. And I have a scientific background, so I have a bachelor's in forensic science and chemistry. And so something that's been really fun for me is to combine like my scientific background and my spiritual side into one, to really actually like emphasize that there is more to life than what we actually quote unquote know or can prove. And I'm convinced that it's that way because you have to trust. Like the magic happens when you just trust and have faith in it. Because that's sort of the mystery of it. And that's sort of the sacredness that comes along with it. And I think that's really important, because as humans, you know, we always want to figure out why it works, or like, how does it work?
Yeah.
And releasing that sort of mentality and returning back to your heart space and learning to trust the feelings versus the logical mind that's always trying to make sense of everything. Because even in my sessions nowadays, like I've experienced this time and time again, and it still just amazes me to this day. But there will be guidance that comes up. I usually will pull like oracle cards before the session just to see what themes are going to come up. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know how these are going to like relate to each other or whatever, but I was like, I trust in it. And then I'll go through my session and it's like, oh my gosh, afterwards it's like, this all makes sense, but it's the fact that like we as humans logically, if it doesn't make sense, we so quickly want to say like, oh, well, that can't be right because it doesn't logically make sense. Whereas through my journey, I'm really learning to release this need to logically make sense of it before I trust in it. And it's like learning to trust in the feeling of it first and then seeing when it plays out. When I first left my job to open my own studio, I had no idea where I was going to be. I didn't know how I was going to do it, or I mean, really any of those things. But I had so much support and so much guidance, and so many messages from my spirit team that this is what I needed to be doing. And so I finally got to this point where I really sat with myself and really spent the time to feel it out too. I really sat in my emotions, sat within myself. Does this feel good? And it did. It really lit me up. And I was like, okay, then, if this is what I'm passionate about, I need to be doing this. And so I really had to trust. I had to put faith that, the universe was, or God or source, or again, whatever label you want to put on it, was guiding me where I needed to be. And even though I didn't have the logics planned out, everything worked out perfectly as it needed to. And I'm like extremely grateful for that. But learning to dive into that trust first is a big step too. That's a big, I want to say a big step in a healing journey is learning to just trust and release the expectations of how things should be. Because when we have those expectations, we really kind of narrow down our possibilities of what could happen for us. Because there were so many times that had I not been open, I wouldn't have seen a blessing coming my way, because I would have been so fixated on it coming from this direction that I wouldn't even seen it like over here,
Now I'm going over here. Don't bother me. I'm over here. Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's huge too. Like, don't close yourself off to the possibilities that you could experience. Try to remain open to any experience, and the concept that things are happening for you, not to you. Like, I'm sure when you decided to do tarot, and lost your job, you were thinking like, oh my gosh, and with that example, a lot of people can fall into like, oh, why is this happening to me? Versus, okay, how can I use this as an opportunity to shift gears?
Exactly. Yeah. Like the fear was still there. There was an opportunity, which I talk about in my chapter in a project that just came out, a book, Soul Alchemy, and I share about this experience of like the temptation was still there to like go back to what I knew, to go back to a customer service job, to go back to, someone else's advice. But like everything in me was like screaming like, you know what you're getting with that result. Like you've lived that, you made that choice. You're really unhappy with that. Like, don't go back to that, right? And so it was like, okay, all right. So it was like a coaching of coming back again and again and again, which is why meditation is such a beautiful, powerful practice, because it just helps you practice that of like, okay, noticing the thoughts that are coming up, coming back into, okay, wait, what do I really want? No, I want peace and happiness and to feel good. So I gave myself space, right, to dive into self-discovery, to dive into healing, and to trust that my dream job at the time, which was I wanted to be a wellness coach, was gonna come through. Like I just put like faith in that. I knew it. I could feel it in my being. Like, okay, yes, but the fear was still there. Like it kept popping up of like, are you sure? Like, should you do this? Like, no. I was like, okay, right. But yeah, so it's an interesting practice to sort of like dance with, but it can be done, right? And like you were talking about of like inspiration and passion to like, you know, your guides are just telling you, and you got the message over and over again, which I don't know how you receive, but a lot for me, it's the
Yeah.
synchronicities, right? You're getting the same message, the same words over again, or, you know, I notice numbers a lot, whether they're repeating numbers or just a different sequence of numbers, looking up the angel spirit meaning of those, like, okay, I meant to do spiritual work and
Yeah.
like help guide people into like their authenticity and their truth and freaking make money doing what they love to do, which is so often that playful nature that we talked a little bit about, right? We want to feel good. Like everyone I work with wants to feel better in some capacity of
Yeah.
their life, and it's 100% possible. So if you're someone, you know, watching the live, watching the replay, who wants to start to notice these patterns that you have and start to let go of some of the things that you know don't serve you. Some of those outdated patterns is what I call them. You know, I would invite you to enter my space, maybe join a moon session with me so we can identify some of those patterns and start to clear them, because you don't have to live with
Yeah.
them. So if you're
Yeah, you
tired
really
of those
don't.
repeats coming in, like find who you're guided to. You know, if it's me, if it's April, if it's someone else, or if it's a meditation or chakra work, like follow, like play
Yeah.
with that, lean into that, say yes, and just see what happens. Do your own experiment, start developing your own trust muscle, and you'll be pleasantly surprised, I promise you.
Definitely. And I like to preface everything with like the fact that everybody needs a guide. Like I
Yes.
myself, even though I'm a Reiki master, I still have my guide that I go to for help. Like, and I think that's the beautiful part about being involved in this healing journey is that we all are so connected that we all still need each other. You're never going to get to this point where you don't need, you know, guidance from somebody else, because we all have different ways we express things. We all have different concepts that we understand. And I, for a long time, went to a couple of different guides. You know, I don't think that you need to feel as though like you have to quote unquote be loyal to like one person. If that person really resonates with you, then go for it. That's great. But don't feel as though you can't like go see another person for guidance or Reiki or whatever it be, because as healers, we all have a unique way of expressing guidance for you. And you know, I may have a client that I meant to deliver some sort of message to them or help them with a specific issue because I've experienced that personally. And maybe when it comes time for another thing to be healed, they resonate with another guide or Reiki master, and that's perfectly okay. Like, that's totally okay, normal. Like, I don't want people to feel like they can't kind of see who they resonate with, too. Like, and I think it's actually beneficial to do that because then you get a range of experiences, of knowledge, of expressions. Like hearing something in a different, like hearing the same idea or concept but said a little bit differently can resonate with somebody else completely differently than the way somebody else needs something said to them or expressed.
That's why I love doing chats like these, because
Yeah,
it's like, oh, like I love self-discovery meditation too. Okay, amazing. But I know I'm not going to talk about it in the same way, you know, that you do, which is why it's so
right.
fun to do
Yeah,
collaborations and things. And yeah, I think it's just part of the human condition. Like your subconscious and your ego, like wants to protect you and keep you safe.
hmm,
And so, like, you can't do it all on your own. You're not meant to do it all on your own. And I'm saying this as someone who was like hyper independent. I can do it. I'll do it by myself. I
yeah,
don't
that
care.
was me too.
Like, I am for like the self-help things. Like, yes, there's so much that you can accomplish with yourself, for yourself, by yourself. Yes. And the massive leaps that I made, I got help.
Yes,
I had to have
yes,
help. That like leap to start my own business, I had massive throat chakra blocks, some of which I wasn't like I kind of knew about, but I wasn't aware of like the depth of them. And somebody had to
absolutely.
help walk with me through that. I couldn't do that by myself.
Yes,
So, and I think part of that too, like the independence block, is just part of our Western society being caught in this masculine energy, this like solar
definitely.
energy of doing and tradition and like, and if you're not manifesting something, it could quite possibly be because you're not open to receive. Your feminine isn't open, your
Yeah,
feminine energy, that divine feminine, which is part of like letting things in and letting things flow, right? So
yes. And
interesting.
yeah, it's a beautiful, and when you start working with that, you realize how many blessings are really around you.
Mm.
When I first started, planning for my business, that was something that I told myself. I told myself I have to release this notion to control everything. And because that was me, same thing. I was very much in my masculine of, oh, I have to be the one to provide for myself. I have to be getting things done. Um, if I'm not actively going out there and trying to get it, then I'm not going to get it. Versus, when I was really going through that, I really started off by just asking for signs from the universe, because I'm the same way with you. Like, I get a lot of synchronicities through numbers. Animals are specific to me as well. Like, I get a lot of symbolisms through animals. And so for me, it was like at the beginning, I was looking online for a shop space and I couldn't find one. And I was like, okay, Spirit, just please give me a sign or guide me to the direction of where I'm meant to be. And I just remained open to it. I told myself I wasn't going to have any expectation. I kind of told Spirit where I would like to be somewhat located. But other than that, I mean, I was really just guided. I went to the bank with my fiance, and there just happened to be a little suite in this strip of businesses that was open and vacant that wasn't listed online anywhere. And, it was just one of those quote unquote coincidences, which, nothing's a coincidence. So,
No.
so I was like, oh my gosh, we've got to go look into that. And so sure enough, and that's just like one of the many little blessings that I received along the way, but I was open to receiving it. And that's like the hugest thing is we can try to manifest and manifest and manifest. And just sitting here saying like, I'm going to get $10,000, you're putting that out there, but if you're not open to actually getting it back, it's going to be very hard to manifest that. And I think that's where a lot of people forget. They sit in this masculine of, contemplating what they want to manifest and what it is that they want. And they're sitting with that. And then they go out there and try to do it, to work towards that manifestation. But then they're not tuning into that feminine aspect of, oh, I know it's going to come to me, and
I'm gonna
opening
attract
up
it
to
to
that.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful part about it. And, I've kind of, even in my own business, I still experience that. I like try to manifest things and then I'm like putting ads out and everything. But it's like, oh, I've got to sit back and trust that who's meant to be here is going to be led here. And, tuning back into that feminine, because that masculine programming runs very deep, especially as a woman in Western society. And,
Mm-hmm.
our true gift is being able to receive. And I think opening up that feminine energy really is magical for women, especially right now, because we are really being called to step back up into that role, because we are unique in our own way. And that's one of our gifts, is being able to receive. And for people that struggle with receiving too, I want them to understand something that not a lot of people discuss about when you're in this space of receiving, you are still giving. So what I like to say is, let's say that somebody gifts me $100. Now, if you're somebody who doesn't like to receive money from other people because it puts you in a place of guilt, or, oh, well, then down the road, I'm going to owe them something because I haven't given them something back. Well, you have. You've given them the gift of joy or happiness for being able to give that to you. And I think so often we forget that being and receiving is also giving too. Like, giving that person the opportunity to give you something gives them something good in return. Like, when you, donate $5 to a cause or something, maybe you do volunteer your time. You feel good about that, and so you're receiving that in exchange for giving something away. And so it's like there's actually this balance here. So for people who struggle with receiving gifts or receiving anything without quote unquote having to work for it, I want you to realize that you are actually still giving something too. So don't feel like you are taking this on with like, oh, what am I going to owe them later? Or what am I going to have to do later on because I received this? Especially with the universe. You know, that's why I think a lot of us sort of talk about this gratitude, expressing that
That's right.
gratitude
I was
towards,
about to go. Yeah.
yeah,
Gratitude. Even
expressing
if
that
you just
gratitude.
match that person in the gratitude right there, probably grateful that they have something to give, whether it's time or a possession or money. And you can be grateful for like receiving that, like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh. And then part of like the work for what I do, and I mean, I think this goes well with what you were sharing. It's like that ripple effect,
Yeah.
right? Like if you feel good for like receiving, then you're more likely to go out and like do something good in a way that you can.
Yep. And vice versa, that person feels good for being able to give you something that you like, you know, or can use. And so then they're put into this place of joy. And so what are they going to go out and then spread and share too? So I think it's less about like this equality of exchange on a physical plane, but you know, the exchange of maybe something physical for something more emotional. You know, because everything's energy. So if you're receiving something and you're giving that person joy, you're giving them what they need in exchange, you know, from a place of exchange of energy. Um, and I think that's important to remember because I know I used to struggle with, you know, being stuck in my masculine, receiving help. You know, when I decided to open my own studio, my fiance has really been financially, you know, stepping up to the plate as I begin this business. And I kind of struggled with that because just like the Western society, I was supposed to be independent. I was supposed to be providing for myself. And I struggled with this being able to receive, you know, stepping into this feminine role of being able to receive that. And I think it's so important that we understand that. Well, he's providing that for me so that then I can then share my gifts with, you know, those who need them, that guidance that they need, and that's a positive influence in the community, which then gives me something in return, which then brings me home to then share with him, you know. So like because he's providing, it's not like he's not getting anything in return. It's I'm coming home more fulfilled, um, that I bring him that energy of joy, of happiness, of connection. So don't think that just because there's nothing tangible being exchanged from your end that you're not giving something to.
Yeah,
Like
that's
emotions can be gifts, you know, like in a way. So if you give somebody the gift of happiness, you know, that's amazing. So I think that's really important.
beautiful. Yeah, I'm glad we were able to touch on that
Yeah.
today. And April, for someone who is wanting to dive into their journey a little bit more, get to know themselves, maybe clear some old energy, outdated patterns, how can they work with you? How can they find you?
So on my Instagram page, I have my scheduling link. I do online or virtual Reiki sessions along with in-person sessions if you're, you know, in the area and want to come in person. I also do Monday night meditations every Monday, and I do those over Zoom. So great topic on the meditations. So if you're somebody who even kind of struggles with that, these are really designed to help you really start your practice, like really start from a beginner's level. Even though they're 20 minutes long, they're really designed to be able to give you something to follow so that you're not necessarily just kind of like stuck looking at your thoughts as like cloud spotting, you know, floating in the sky, you know. So they're more integrated. Some of them are very deeply healing. I had a participant last time, didn't feel like they really got a visualization of what they were experiencing, but they left feeling they were very calm and everything. And the theme of this meditation was to release the limitations or limiting beliefs you had around pursuing your passion. And 3 days later, I hear them talking about how they're done, they're going to pursue it, you know, blah, blah. And I kind of joked with them. I was like, it sounds like you got a little bit more out of the meditation than you thought. And they're like,
That
oh
you
my
thought
gosh, I
you
didn't
did.
even think about that. You know,
The
so
power of working with your subconscious. Yeah.
yes. So I always tell everybody you receive everything you need to in the moment that you're ready to receive it. So,
Beautiful.
but I do the meditations, and then I also do group Reiki classes in person. I do oracle readings. There's a list of descriptions on that page if you want to visit and see me. But I love doing the Holy Fire Reiki. I think it's so deeply healing, and it's an amazing energy reset, cleansing that old stagnant energy away and then inviting in that beautiful new healing energy is super amazing, super powerful. So that's my favorite.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I'll definitely have to check out some of those Monday meditations because Monday is a great day that aligns with like the moon and lunar energy, which
Hmm.
ties deep into subconscious and your intuition and trust,
Yes,
right? So
definitely.
it sounds like a perfect activity for a Monday. Yeah, I love that that
I like
lined
to
up.
start the week off
And
right too, with a good meditation. So,
absolutely. Yeah, and for anyone who's interested in working with me, I help women make money doing what they love. And so a lot of what I journey with you into is this inward journey of your patterns and cycles of emotions, thoughts, and behaviors, and connecting more deeply with your intuition so that you can trust and create that vision and actually turn it into something. So whether you work with me one-on-one in a moon session or later this week, I'm going to be diving into dreamality, which is a concept where we talk about sort of the past and where you have been, maybe some of the pain and hurt, into talking about the transformation to that journey of your dream and your vision and creating it into your reality. So you arrive at this dreamality, but how the duality of it and how they both exist while we're still here in this Gemini season. So if you're interested in that, make sure you follow me here on Instagram, Psychic Moon Mentor, and then I'm on Facebook as well. I have a moon community, which you can hit the link in my bio to find it there. But beautiful. Yeah, thank you, April, again for being here. Maybe we
thank
can
you
do
for having
another one of these, possibly on like synchronicities or like animal spirit guides, because that's really huge for me. I
me.
think that would be fun
Yeah,
as
I would
well.
love to. Yeah, that would be super fun. And thank you for having me and inviting me. And it's been really fun.
Yeah, it has been. Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks, everyone. Happy moon manifesting.